I saw the most fascinating tattoo this week at work. I didn't mention them because I quite frankly didn't have confidence that I'd be able to keep it together while she explained herself to me. But tattoos on like covering the shoulders, unless they're tribal tattoos, just from an aesthetic standpoint, generally don't look good.
Yeah.
Ones on your shoulders of faces particularly don't look good. But this person had a full-blown shoulder covering Emperor Palpatine tattoo. And I was like, you realize he's the bad guy, right? That's who you want everyone to see you and associate you with, right? That wrinkly old evil asshole. Also, further up the arm, I noticed Darth Maul, which I don't know if you've seen any Star Wars, but he's a real looker.
He is.
Got horns coming out the head and everything. And I quote, something, the dark side. So this person took Star Wars, made it their personality, and then somehow got worse from there in a way that's really hard to conceal, especially if you choose to wear sleeveless tops, which I highly don't recommend. But this person chose to.
Roughly how old was this person?
North of 40.
Yikes. A woman?
And they had pretty big saggy arms too. So there was like zero saving grace.
There's
here.
no shot this is anyone who
doesn't use the moving electric carts in Walmart and Costco.
There you go. There's a way to say it. I couldn't think of any way remotely tactful to say it, but that is correct. You know what's crazy? The fact that you can tell me this person has these two tattoos and immediately I stereotype them into exactly who they are. That's what's crazy.
Yeah. You know, profiling, you can call it wrong or right, but you can't tell me it's ineffective. A lot of the time.
That's funny.
That's the weirdest thing about being in like customer service or service type industry roles where you hear someone on the phone or you hear them over the intercom or you serve them and you're like, you seem like the type of person that's about to pull this kind of bullshit on me. And then they proceed to do exactly that kind of bullshit on you. And you're like, nice.
I'm not surprised, but still, I am disappointed.
I was not surprised, but it did not stop my disappointment.
I hoped otherwise.
Bro, people are crazy. I feel like a small minority of people are crazy until I, do service industry type things. And then I'm like, oh, most people are crazy.
Yeah, I think people are tired.
That's possible too.
Which is it's like a super reductive and simplistic way of putting it, but people are tired, man. They don't have patience for anything. And I feel that, dude. I do.
Well, yeah, I guess this is another thing that the service industry has taught me is patience, because quite frankly, a lot of people are just having bad days. It ain't that deep, bro. It's just people are having bad days.
Speaking of bad days, shall we hop into this episode?
I think we shall.
Well, welcome to the Deep Fried Gaming Podcast, a podcast focusing on games and game news. We do old games, new games, reviews, roasts, and retrospectives. I'm one of your hosts, Josh.
And I'm the other host, RJ.
Today we're back with another review roast. There's a little bit of a controversy going on right now, folks. Warhammer 40k. Are you a Warhammer 40k fan?
Not particularly.
No, I'm not either. However, I know brain rot when I see it.
It's true. It's not hard to miss. If you're wondering what the connection between, some people having a bad day is and Warhammer, then we shall enlighten you with this little article written by someone about the experiences that they had in the Warhammer 40k community as a 15-year-old and how it influenced their perception of it and the gamer space in general. And what better way to take a moment to appreciate all this than with a nice review roast?
Correct.
Correct.
If you haven't listened to our previous review roast, it's pretty simple. We take an article or a review or some sort of journalistic brain rot and dissect it. And to be clear, a lot of it's tongue-in-cheek and a lot of it goes in a little hard because it's funny, but there's no ill will other than, hey, this is kind of dumb. Probably shouldn't have written that. Yeah. That's about as deep as it goes, folks.
Mm-hmm.
But
it ain't similar to the, is this sexism? Is this someone having a bad day? It ain't that deep.
It ain't that deep.
So, shall we hop right into it? What's this title? What's this article titled, Joshua?
So this article comes from gamesradar, which is I got a mixed feeling on this website. I feel like it's gone a lot more towards the kind of tabloid style gaming rag.
Very unique trend in the gaming journalistic space.
Like the way Kotaku is going. I'm just kidding. They've always been that way. Anyways, the title of the article is How to Stop a Teenage Girl from Playing Warhammer. And it's by Abigail Shannon. Obviously, you could say hi to Abigail Shannon and say, hey, you're looking well, don't say anything about her looks, probably because that's
don't
sexist
say anything.
Or whatever. But like, your article's looking good or whatever. Anyways.
Don't go say anything
Inside a
to
hate
Shannon,
mob
please.
right off the bat.
Inside hate mob.
But
don't say anything to Abigail Shannon, please.
Just don't say anything. The point is don't say anything. I don't know why I said go say hi. The point is don't say anything.
Mixed messages. Go ahead and say something to Abigail Shannon. And by go ahead and say something, I mean say nothing.
Say
please.
nothing. Read the article and enjoy. By the way, I did scroll to Twitter. She's got some funny memes on Twitter. I'll give her that. Pretty funny.
Mostly centering around a little game that happens.
Yeah, it's very
very
ironic because we happen to be playing a certain game right now for a review. But the subtitle is The subtitle of the article is A Journey with War Games and 2 Visits to the Warhammer Store. You want to start us off, RJ?
Being a woman who plays Warhammer can suck.
Paste.
This isn't news, of course. And you know what? Fair. Being involved in the tabletop RPG community can be a little rough, I imagine.
Great point.
For men and women. We'll get back to that one, though. At least as a woman playing video games, you can mostly cross enemy lines without a hitch, even if you play online multiplayer. After all, disguising your gender can be as simple as turning off your mic and resisting the deep-seated urge to play healer. I'm joking. Mostly.
Great point. I mean, you kind of took the point right out of my mouth. Being a woman who plays Warhammer can suck. This isn't news, of course. It's like nice vague posting, bro. It's like, I'm a person and I do a thing and sometimes it sucks. Awesome. Point proven. Like, let's wrap it up, dude. Like, you can't just say, hey, I do a thing and sometimes it sucks. This isn't news, of course.
Being a guy who plays online video games can suck. This isn't news, of course. It's like, Yes. Is this the intro to a video on Call of Duty in 2015?
Yeah, we're talking about.
Sorry,
talking about Call of Duty lobbies? Like, what do you mean? Being a woman who plays Warhammer can suck. Like, this is it's a good hook. I'll give that to her. It's a great hook. Cause I'm hooked. I can already feel my brain bleeding out my ears.
I did also find it somewhat telling that the way she described playing video games with guys as crossing enemy lines.
Yeah.
That's rather telling.
We're playing the meta game here, dude.
Tell me you're ready to get offended by anything someone says to you without telling me you're ready to get offended about anything.
It's so
I crossed
silly.
enemy lines and played a video game.
So this gets into this gets into trash talk and video games in general. And maybe I'm alone in this, so feel free to check my privilege if I'm totally off base here. But she's talking about trash talk in games, right? I assume. Yes. It has to be, because what else is it? Like, you're going to get banned or something, maybe. But that's not very common, let's be real. Does she know how trash talk works? If I'm talking to a fat dude, I'm going to say, you fat piece of shit. Like, that's how I'm going to trash talk. I'm not going to say, go make me a sandwich. Doesn't make any sense. You take into account the person you're talking to, and then you say the meanest thing you can possibly think. And to be clear, I'm not saying it's right. Okay, what I am saying is that it's equality, because if I'm going to trash talk some dude, then I'm going to find the thing he's most insecure about, or the thing that's going to hurt him most, or the thing that's most applicable to him, and spew that fire at him. And the same goes to her. Now, admittedly,
online?
Let's be real,
Yes.
the whole get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich is the most trite, old, unimaginative nonsense ever. Right?
But that's what a lot of online trash talk is, and the instinct on her part to shut off the mic as opposed to fire back is not necessarily wrong or bad. And like you said, find the lowest hanging fruit and attack it isn't necessarily a judgment on whether or not that's good, which it's probably not.
It's probably not.
But it is the reality of the situation, and that's kind of how competition works amongst guys. That's how online games work generally, because they're mostly inhabited by guys. And when someone attacks you for being a woman in a competitive shooting video game, it's not because they hate women. It's because it's the most obvious first thing that they can choose to attack. If you sound like you're a fat lard in your microphone, even if you aren't, they're gonna yell, "Stop beating the mic!" Or if you suck at the game, if you did one bad play, they're gonna be like, "Wow, are you blind and paraplegic?" Like, there's no real escape from it. And it's not, directed at you as a woman. It's directed towards you, and you happen to be a woman. But that's just kind of how the space works. And there can always be the case to made that, like, one could or should soften up certain places. But honestly, that's just like where the gaps in the market exist to create new gaming spaces. One of the reasons that Valorant has taken off, in part, as well as why it gets mocked, is because it's such a more female-friendly competitive first-person shooter. And for that, it gets mocked, but also for that, it gets a different new set of players, which is a good thing, I think, having these spaces that are tailor-made for different tastes. And you're not going to convince the toxic asshole to stop being a toxic asshole by saying, "Hey, it's not nice."
I know this stuff works. Because this woman's writing an article about how upset it makes her.
I mean, yeah.
Am I wrong? Like, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is make you upset. And instead of being like...
Literally, Journo's mad.
And yeah, sometimes they will say true things. Like, telling me to go, like, cook you a sandwich is honestly so lazy it's embarrassing. Yeah. Correct! Like, yes, it is. But you're still writing about it. And she doesn't even say that here. She's just like, it can really suck. You admitted it sucked, dude. You admitted tabletop RPGs suck, and then you draw a distinction between those and online games where it also sucks, but you can just mute your mic. And it's like, dude, the difference... There's also like a weird dichotomy, is that the right word? Between like when guys are bullied and when girls are bullied. And I think that's not necessarily unwarranted, but guys are way meaner to each other. Yeah. But because they're always so mean to each other, it's like, well, that's just normal. Like, well, at what point is it normal for you just to trash talk women in video games, dude? Like, it's just kind of video game culture. What I'm not suggesting is that like, this is good stuff.
Everybody be mean.
And we should all just like be toxic and it's awesome. But I am suggesting that it happens to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, the virtues of bullying children on the internet aside, it's just...
We're kind of getting deep into it for the first paragraph, but the later... paragraphs will kind of illuminate why we're getting onto this track. It's just perplexing because it's like on Twitter or like any other major internet space, it's taken as a given, but it's like once we enter video games where we're competing with each other, it's like, did you hear that? He was a complete dick in my video game.
That is funny. Like we somehow like this is there's parity between every form of like internet consumption. If you go on social media and you drop something mildly controversial, you'll have rainbow banners or Trump flags come out of the woodwork to scream epithets at you, and it's just like, dude, it's the same everywhere.
It is. It kind of is. We just hate each other, I guess.
We just hate because we have no patience and we're tired. Shall we move on?
Let's move on. Do you want to continue playing in person?
Yes. Playing in person, often a prerequisite for war games and the best tabletop RPGs, can throw a real spanner in the works. What you share of yourself is no longer your gamer tag or your avatar. It's your face, your body, your voice, each an element carrying with it its very own cultural baggage. When you pick up tabletop games, you're often looking for a little more than just someone to play with. You're looking for a community. As the heated, scare quote, discourse around the place of women in Warhammer 40k's canon surges on, it's a stinging reminder that finding that community is not always so easy if you're not a dude.
This is actually something that I think that is more of a figment of the imagination more than it is the reality of the situation when they talk about meeting up and playing tabletop RPGs in real life, because that's actually where people are nicer. Correct. People are going to say super, as we were talking about, really mean things to anyone on the internet because they have the mask of anonymity and the fact that they don't have to deal with the repercussions. There's a very famous funny tweet interaction online where someone's talking about a like a mixed martial artist fighter, and someone goes like, "You suck, such and such," and then the fighter responds. He's like, "You want to say that to me in person?" He goes, "No, you'd kick my ass. That's why I said it online," which is so true, and exactly how this works. You know, people aren't going to be, you know, a jerk to you because you're a woman. Probably there are outliers to everything, but generally speaking, you walk into some kind of tabletop RPG venue ready to play games and have fun. They're not going to be like, especially a bunch of like nerds who would chomp at the bit for the opportunity to spend an afternoon with a woman who's like being nice to them. Are you kidding me?
That's the thing that is boggling my mind. Like these nasty incels, they hate women. And it's like, dude, these guys would feel blessed to like have a woman in their proximity for more than 15 seconds. Like a woman who can stand their BO. What do you mean?
I mean, that's the hell of being a woman in the Warhammer 40k community, is dealing with the stinky.
The stinky, yeah.
Which I'm not saying that all Warhammer 40k people are sweaty nerds, but it's like, we all know the tabletop RPG type and the type of people that go to like, you know.
Which, yes, and events. This is why I think it's also interesting, because she talks about it's your face, your body, your voice, each an element carrying with it its very own cultural baggage. The cultural baggage part is presumably referring to being a woman, right? But the rest of it, your face, your body, etc. What are you like? What are you competing against, dude?
Yeah.
What are you worried about?
True.
You worried about being?
It's true.
Like, really?
Well, and
you think you're gonna sit down at a Warhammer table and be the most
the dead weight?
Yeah, like what are you saying? And like, you're fine, dude. And chill. You're fine.
Not to mention the fact that even if you have like some what's the word? If you have some negatives to your appearance, those are often, if not always, counteracted by a good personality.
Yeah.
First impressions of appearance, not necessarily for dating purposes, but for just the purposes of making friends and making acquaintances, can often be overlooked by a good personality. And this reluctance to put yourself out there in real life is maybe something of a symptom of the internet, but also a point worth pointing out with this writer in particular, because a lot of the stuff that they're writing about and that they're struggling with generally seems to be stuff that could be overcome with just going to a meet and greet type thing, an in-person Warhammer 40k game, you know? I mean, it's not, these things aren't as common as they were in the 80s, but they're still pretty common.
Yeah. I mean,
especially in big cities.
The reality is, she's right. It is about more than just painting figurines or whatever. It is about finding community, and a lot of people genuinely find community in these meetings. And it's not a coincidence that a lot of these guys have problems. They maybe come from bad home lives or whatever. Like, there's a reason they are the way that they are, but they find community in these places, and they find other people who can like relate to them, and that's a great thing. So I don't think she's necessarily wrong on that front, but I just think she's wrong in her interpretation that it's not so easy to find community if you're not a dude.
Yeah. In fact, if you are not abrasive, it's probably a little easier in certain cases to be a woman in this instance. But anyway, continuing on. As a 15-year-old girl with a voracious desire to play tabletop RPGs and a friend group who couldn't be less interested in the idea, I struggled to organically tap into the tabletop hobby. My first contact with wargames happened on the suggestion of a teacher of mine. Apparently, her son, a fellow D&D nerd, wandered into the Warhammer store after the Age of Sigmar launch drew him in like a moth to a fantasy flame. Cue the friendly sales assistants initiating him into the wonderful worlds of Warhammer. Yes, please, I'll have what he's having. Once I convinced my best friend to stray from our usual Saturday routine of drinking bubble tea and buying tat at Forbidden Planet, the plan was in motion. I was going to the Warhammer store. Unfortunately, I didn't exactly receive the same warm reception.
Boy, this bothers me because... So first of all, she kicks it off with a voracious appetite to play TTRPGs, tabletop RPGs. We'll get back to the whole voracious thing. That's a very strong word, by the way. That's not really related to the article, but we might get back to it. So it might be related. Anyway. So that's the first thing. He uses voracious. So my eyes are now like scanning this article for this voracious appetite. I will say, props to you, lady. Bubble tea. It's a good choice.
Good choice.
I'm man enough to admit that. It's good.
I do like me a good bubble tea.
I'd have a bubble tea with you and discuss this probably.
Discuss Warhammer 40k.
Warhammer. You could be kind to me and tell me about painting figurines or whatever. Anyways, we're gonna move on. Unless you have something to say about that, but
no, my only things that come later, contrasting, not necessarily about that directly.
Specifically, the voracious part, which is a very key word, I think.
You think so?
I do think it's a very key word.
Okay.
It's a pivotal point for this entire article. The fact that she used the word voracious.
It's the linchpin of the article, it's the linchpin, if you will.
Which is ironic because me throwing the entire article out of whack because of one probably just like poorly used
innocuous word.
Yeah, innocuously poorly used word is the exact same thing as her like interpreting 10 years of her life over one statement.
Which we're about to unravel right now.
We are about to do that. Warhammer store Dublin in 2015.
2015, by the way.
Yes, take note of that. 2015. This is not like last month. Technically speaking, your money is worth the same no matter where you shop. Although if you really pay attention, you'll start to notice that your presence is valued a little differently everywhere you go. Those women's clothing stores that stocked cheap crop tops? Hell yeah. 15-year-old girls are the gold standard there. These were the places where the sales assistants shot us easy smiles and called us pet names. At least at this particular Warhammer store, things were very different. The employee there floated stiffly behind my friend and I as we inspected the boxes of minis and tiny pots of paint. He never engaged us as he did with the other customers. He just watched accusingly. It took me a good while before I built up the courage to start asking questions about what was on the shelves.
He indulged my first few questions with a cold yes or no before breaking the pattern with a sharp sigh. If you don't know what you're looking for, then why are you here? Oh God. My cheeks went hot. This wasn't a question. This was a poorly concealed request for us to both piss off. It's hard to know why he turned on us like that. Was he a virulent sexist? Was it some kind of revenge of the nerd style lashing out against women that had disparaged his hobby in the past? Was he just having a bad day? I'll admit, I can't know for sure.
You can't know for sure.
I do appreciate, I must say, both on the first and the following readings, I noticed and appreciated how, of the three options, two of them were some form of he hates women.
Yeah, well, you're correct. But then she offers was he just having a bad day? And it's like, oh.
Can't be sure.
We can't be sure. Okay, you can't be sure. But like the entire article is, well, this is how you destroy women's desire to play Warhammer. Well,
this is the entire article is kind of predicated
he didn't say
on
anything
it being
sexist.
The former two.
The fact that you have to theorize he might be sexist would suggest that he was just kind of mean to you, and you're interpreting that it's because you're a woman. And if that wasn't the case, if it really was just a bad day, or maybe you were asking some really dumbass questions, and as a matter of fact, you were. She has some of the questions right here. Are those aliens? Do you just paint them? Do you have to pick those exact colors? Oh, that's cool. What do you do after that? Now, let's go back to that word, voracious real quick. You have a voracious appetite for tabletop RPGs, but you don't understand how painting figurines works? Did you look into these, or are you just I hear all the coolest kids play tabletop RPGs. I don't know what they are. Look, man, I've never played D&D or a tabletop RPG in my life. I'm not saying they're the same thing. Get out of my ass. But I understand you paint figurines. I would never go into a Warhammer store and go, wait, so the paint that's next to the figurines, do they go together? I wouldn't be confused, but I could put two and two together.
The poor girl's 15, and that's what I think is more.
This is what I'm saying. You're
more of an explanation for what's going on here. If I was running some kind of store or a floor clerk, and I had stuff to do, I wasn't having a good day, or I just would rather talk to a customer who's like passionate about, like, if you're working at a Warhammer store, you're passionate about Warhammer.
Yes.
You probably much more enjoy talking to like a 20 and up individual who you can like nerd out about it with than some 15-year-old girl asking questions. And I think it's far more a matter of like, you're 15 than anything else, because he realizes, well, they're too young to work. They probably don't have the money to buy anything. And they clearly have zero idea at all about anything about Warhammer. So, like, he probably just lost his patience answering dumbass questions, which you're totally entitled to have dumbass questions as a 15-year-old who has never touched Warhammer. I will give you the voracious comment was a little bit conflicting with the notion that she was asking these very beginner level questions like, are those aliens? The linchpin, if you will, of the article. But I'll still give her the benefit of the doubt and say, like, she's 15 freaking years old. Like, I don't expect her in the same way as I would a grown adult to have like gone on the internet and like searched up the internet herself, or like found out some other way to get the information, you know?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily either, except with the way that the story is painted. Is that she's like, we had to change our evening plans. I was going to go to the Warhammer store. How do you know what Warhammer is? Dude, I didn't know what Warhammer... It was so confusing having not looked into Warhammer till, a couple like years ago. I kind of looked into it and understood that it was a whole universe and they just have games and whatever built out of it. So if I know what Warhammer is, then you'd think I have like a rudimentary knowledge. If I'm going to a Warhammer store, then I've graduated beyond, oh, it's a video game series, to, oh, it's a tabletop RPG. It's like, it just seems like a very natural progression. So the idea that, oh, I've got to go to the Warhammer store. It seems like you know at least literally the most rudimentary knowledge about the game Warhammer. Just
prompting
my opinion.
The question, if you don't know what you're looking for, why are you here? Like he's someone who's trying to get someone to buy stuff. Clearly, he was under the impression that you were not really in the right spot because... like you're in the Warhammer store to buy stuff theoretically. And this is honestly more of an indictment of just like bad salesmanship than anything.
Right.
Like if a waiter walked up to your table and you asked a bunch of admittedly dumb questions like, so when it says like there's spinach in that salad, does that mean, is it green? Because I need my leafy greens every day. And someone said, if you didn't know what you wanted, why are you here? That would be a pretty arguably fireable thing to say to a customer. Like, what are you doing in the service industry, period, if you're going to say stuff like that to customers? So I'm not defending this guy at all. Sounds like he sucks. Is the explanation that he's taking out his rampant sexism on a 15-year-old girl? Probably not. Not.
Again, I just want to keep re-emphasizing this. I'm not defending bad actors who are doing and saying bad things. I'm suggesting that they're not saying them for the reason you think they're saying them. That's my only contention here. Of course this guy sucks. What kind of guy, like, if you don't know what you're getting and you don't know what you're doing, why are you here? Well, to learn, maybe. I just asked if you paint these things. Clearly, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, teach me senpai, maybe. All right.
Do you want to read on from, I think it's All I Know, yeah.
I'll admit, I don't know for sure. All I know is that it was a familiar antagonism. It was an antagonism I'd felt before from especially bristly GameStop employees, from customers at my retail job who would look right past me and seek tech advice from my male coworkers, and from rock fans who'd ask me to name songs from the bands whose t-shirt I was wearing. It was a feeling of being subjected to gatekeeping. His words carried with them a belief that not only did I not know what I was talking about, but I also was not welcome to learn. So, of course, I took this as my cue to leave. Thankfully, this isn't a universal experience, and I'm sure it's not part of the game workshop's staff training to scare girls off playing war games.
One might argue.
One might argue that. Still, interactions like this, however rare they may be, can be enough to make newbies feel unwelcome and even unsafe with those they're hoping to share the space with. Hell, it can even scare them off the hobby completely. I passed that Warhammer store many times in the years following my first poorly received visit. I did not go back in.
So don't read too much into things that people do, because I can honestly think of like many vague memories of times that I felt rubbed the wrong way by something that someone did, or bothered by things that people did. And as a normal person just existing in the world, I can imagine that I've probably done it to people as a customer, a ton to people, given someone the wrong impression about what I was doing there, my intentions, whatever. And I think it's important to realize that people are not always on their A game. People sometimes suck. Sometimes people are just like tired and unaware or whatever. I would wager that there's other more reasonable explanations before we get to like sexism and gatekeeping.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned, once again, maybe the root of this isn't sexism. And now she talks about like the gatekeeping. She talks about this gatekeeping, and she uses the word gatekeeping, which is totally fine. Gatekeeping is a real thing, and it's annoying, and it sucks. But this isn't like regular gatekeeping she's talking about. It's the whole sexism, and that's what she's trying to draw out in this paragraph where she talks about the antagonism. And then she lists 3 things. The first, bristly GameStop employees. Okay, we'll give that one to you. It's a win. The GameStop employees didn't like you because you're a woman. We'll just say, yeah, fine. From customers at my retail job who would look right past me and seek tech advice from my male coworkers. So, when was this retail job, if I could ask? Were you like 18, 17 even, 16? I'll tell you something, man. I'm 25, but I don't look it. And people look right past me all the time. Why? Because they don't want some 18, 20-year-old working on their house, or, they don't think I have experience. They think I'm a kid.
Adults who pay money for houses and computers and cars don't want kids working on them, regardless of whether they're men or women. And this person writing this article is young. Like, so young that if this is a past tense job, you could easily like have the explanation of, oh, they perceived them as like incapable because child, not incapable because woman.
Easily be interpreted that way. Alternatively, here's another explanation, and this one is questionable, right? I get it. If you don't agree with this one, we talked about generalizations and stereotypes not not being what did you say? What was the phrase you used?
Helpful, though, or they can be accurate, but not necessarily a good thing to do.
Correct. He says seeking tech advice. If we're gonna stereotype, are you gonna ask the smaller 17-year-old 5'4" gal standing behind the counter, or the neckbeard looking dude who's got like anime tattoos? Who's gonna probably know more about tech? Is it right? Not necessarily. It isn't sexism though, it's just stereotyping. So pick your battles, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be talking about stereotyping instead of sexism. Yeah, if I saw young Sheldon like standing behind the counter, I'm probably gonna go to him before I'd go to, Granny McGee.
Anyone else.
Yeah. If he's
period.
got a pocket protector and pens in it, the guy's gonna know his stuff. Like, why would I not talk to the dude? Anyway. The third one is rock fans who'd ask me to name songs from the band whose t-shirt I was wearing. We just had this not too long ago. Stranger Things released, and they had AC/DC songs in it, I think. I haven't watched the new season. I think it was AC/DC. And sure enough,
the new season out
there was gatekeeping. You're a fake fan. You only like the songs that are on Stranger Things. Do you know any other songs? It wasn't sexism. It was gatekeeping because these were young kids watching the show and then buying AC/DC shirts.
Well, that's I don't think the last one is supposed to be an example of sexism, but I think it's just her talking broad strokes about gatekeeping in general.
Because I've heard this a number of times. You see a woman in a metal shirt and you have to ask her to name songs because you don't believe women listen to metal. I've heard this. And it's like, sure. Some guys probably do. But like you can't like demonstrate any of these are actually because of sexism as opposed to I gave you the GameStop one, even though I totally believe like anybody else they could be having a bad day. And if they're a bristly GameStop employee, maybe they're just jerks to everybody, dude. I've met those
Or they're
too.
just people who are not skilled socially. Like, we're talking about gamers here, notoriously,
also true.
Not socially adept people.
I know, it's weird to me because I've gone into stores and I've had so many bad interactions, but it's just like, I don't think, oh, well, shit. Now because I'm white or short or a male. Like, none of that, never. It's like, oh, they don't like me because either they're having a bad day, or maybe if I'm in a more cynical mood, they're just a mean person. You could argue it's ignorance on my part, but like, how do you explain it? Like, there is an explanation for why somebody has a bad interaction with me, why they're mean to me, right? And so it's just weird that you have to eliminate all the other options. And she, in fairness, she doesn't do this because she a number of times says it could be a bad day, it could be because whatever, he got a divorce or whatever last night, whatever. Like,
but like the basis of the article
correct.
is
like, this is how you ruin women's experiences in Warhammer by
it's
dropping
like that's just how you
comment.
ruin customers' experiences. The idea is that's kind of drawing an indictment on like gamer spaces in general because it's unwelcoming to women. It's like, well, gaming in general isn't very welcome to anyone. And when it comes to like the online competitive space, it's welcome to no one because it's inherently competitive. Or if you're dealing with like the really passionate, excited fans of a certain franchise, you're gonna like receive a certain level of impatience possibly with someone who's at like having to answer a rudimentary question. If you're like really, really deep into Harry Potter, like super deep into Harry Potter, would you rather be discussing like interesting lore, or would you rather explain like why is it Avada Kedavra instead of like abracadabra? Like, like if you're answering questions like that as like a diehard Harry Potter fan, wouldn't you find that kind of grating and annoying? Not justifying a negative reaction to it, but you can probably understand that like where a diehard fan would maybe get impatient, especially if they're the assholey type to take out their bad day on a customer.
The unactually types, yeah.
Which I guess at the end of the day, this whole episode is somewhat of a microcosm of the like see funny thing, point and laugh on the internet. That kind of is what we were talking about in the like, competitive, antagonistic online spaces, especially when it comes to like competitive gaming and stuff. But also I feel like the gaming space and like the whole male female thing would be healed quite a bit if we stopped jumping to like gamers are sexist pigs who hate women in their spaces and looked more at
gamers are just
reasonable explanations for why people have negative experiences. I mean, like, I'd never have interactions with people and go like, ugh, of course they were a woman, they're a total
Well, here's the thing. It's funny because like what we're doing right now, we're commenting on an article that is dumb. Why are we doing this? Why are we criticizing this? Because the article's dumb. Not because the author's a woman, dude. But doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because the response to a conversation like this is, oh, they hate women. And they hate women speaking back against men's spaces. Not really, dude. Look, man, I wouldn't care if the Warhammer community was 80% women. Genuinely would not care one bit. This article's dumb, though. That's why we're talking about it. And the way that this usually plays out is like nobody gets what they want. It's like women get a space that's like then been evacuated because there's a hostile takeover, and men have to basically just kind of like roll over and take it. And it's like nobody gets what they want when the discourse flows in this way, Yeah. And it poisons the well for everyone. It doesn't make it more inviting for women, and then men have better perspectives on women. Men are like, well, this isn't what I'm here for. I didn't get come here to get a finger wagging, so I'll leave. And quite frankly, it's just not productive for anyone involved. But moving on, I think it kind of takes us towards the end. So I'll just kind of read until you have something to say, and we'll go from there. So fast forwarding some years, it was one emigration and almost a decade later before I found myself in a Warhammer store again. It was one of many stores my boyfriend and I had planned to pop into on a leisurely trip to Bristol. But I had evolved. As an adult, I had learned a little more about how to get by in spaces I felt I didn't belong in. The plan was to hide behind my boyfriend, play the role of the bored but supportive girlfriend, and learn by osmosis through what the employees would tell him. I was just safer this way, I thought. What I didn't anticipate happening was the sales assistant reaching out to me and asking about my experience with Warhammer. I told him I was a total beginner and sheepishly downplayed my interest in getting started. I really didn't fancy getting shot down again.
However, not only did he enthusiastically answer questions I posed to him, he started delivering advice apropos of nothing, recommending books and starter kits, and opening the door for me to find out more about the hobby and the people who enjoyed it.
Oh boy.
Now, this should tell you a few things, and this kind of goes back to earlier to what I was talking about. This sounds like it was blown out of proportion due to social nervousness, that it took you years to feel to like work up the nerve to even like go back into one of these stores, and it was only with the shield of your boyfriend. And even then, you wouldn't like speak up. You would stand behind and just learn through osmosis until someone crossed the bridge and reached out to you. Now, I'm no psychologist or therapist or counselor, but something tells me that this kind of might be a you problem.
This kind of might be a you problem. I think that's correct.
Yeah. Granted, this sounds like a negative experience with a worker, but this isn't like a dude yelled at you and told you to get out of his shop. This was like a...
You had some socially inept nerd in a Warhammer store say, if you don't know what you're looking for, why are you here? And that scarred you for 8 years. You couldn't step foot in a Warhammer store because you were so socially traumatized by that. And you're going to say that's like the Warhammer community chasing you off? Are you sure that's the angle you want to take with this?
Yeah.
You're actually going to pin that on them because of one employee who didn't have social skills and maybe was a sexist.
Yeah. So moving on towards the end of the article, she says, progress is being made in representation for women, people of color, and LGBTQ plus people in Warhammer games. No doubt this is a worthwhile development, even despite the slightly scary, very politically charged backlash. Even in the absence of this, the most meaningful inclusion happens at your local store and within the community itself. In hobby spaces like Warhammer, which have developed an unfortunate boys' club reputation, it's just as important to see female players around the table as it is to see female minis on it. In order for that to happen, they have to feel accepted and welcomed. So make an effort to engage new players and be kind and try to be receptive to their questions. As it turns out, it's pretty easy to stop a teenage girl from playing Warhammer if you don't. Which, fair enough. It's pretty easy to deter a teenage girl from doing anything if you show a little bit of negative social backlash for it. But this kind of applies for all teens because they're hormonal and scared of everything. I also find this like Warhammer's like a boys club thing to be a little silly because it's kind of given like the same intimidation level of the boys club of, I don't know, powerful businessmen, because those guys have power and social status and are used to just having their way with anyone they wanted, so they can just be like, back off, woman. But it's like you're likening the neckbeard Warhammer tabletop RPG players to these people who, you know, are gatekeeping women from interacting with them, and that just like isn't adding up to me at all. But I did appreciate truly how the article is predicated on maybe this guy's sexist because he mean to me, but there wasn't this, oh, Warhammer isn't a sexist community because guy was nice to me in response. You know, like the sales associate who reached out to her was a guy, so there was never the like, oh, maybe it ain't so bad after all. It was like what, sexism question mark? Oh, guy and nice. Warhammer has improved, you know, like I don't know. It's just kind of silly.
So this is going to be probably the most controversial thing I've said tonight, which is saying something. She says progress is being made in representation for women, POC, LGBTQ, yada yada. You know, all the buzzwords. This is a worthwhile development. The most meaningful inclusion happens at your local store, yada yada. It's important to see female players around the table as it is to see female minis on it. I would argue it's not important at all. Even remotely.
Probably true.
And here's why.
Yeah.
Somebody in the 80s, I think it was the 80s, created Warhammer. They were like, oh, this is cool. I like Space Marine. This is awesome. Whoever comes and wants to play Warhammer, plays Warhammer. Okay? That's Warhammer. If you want to make your own thing, make your own thing. They're not purposely excluding people, right? You can argue this one dude and this one dude in the Warhammer store was, but the point is, like, they're not making a product for everybody. They're making a product for people who like that product. Okay?
Yeah.
And there's nothing, like, you would talk about the boys club, and I think you're right on that point as well. These are nerds, man. They're not bad people. They're just nerds. They're into this kind of thing. I'm not really into tabletop RPGs. I never really dabbled in them much, but I have no interest in them. So I don't feel they're excluding me because like the game doesn't appeal to me as a male, as a red-blooded male. It's not for me, dude. And you know what?
Yeah.
If I want to make like a live-action tabletop RPG where we have role-play elements and real-life, elements and whatever, I can do that. So like if you want
because you're passionate enough about it to pursue it.
Correct.
The sentence like really shouldn't read, it's just as important to see female players around the table as it is to see female minis on it. It should read, it's important to see people who are passionate about Warhammer around the table.
And
because
then
at the end of the day, that's what keeps the franchise going. It's what keeps community interest going and all that kind of stuff. The arbitrary we need women in X thing is why people are not receptive to your presence. Possibly because you come in with an agenda. Why don't you just come in as a fan and enjoy
Correct.
it with the people there, as opposed to, we need to change this. I know you guys got your thing going on here, but we got to change it.
Yeah, and who are you as a 15-year-old to come in and be like, actually, we need more women. It's like, I've been doing this for 20 years, actually, and I think the lore is pretty cool. Like, it is a lore thing. It's not just a game to these people. Like, there is a deep-seated lore that's been going on for decades, and it's established, and it's a world that they enjoy taking part in. It's the rules of the world that you're trying to come in and alter because it's important, in quotes, to see women.
This
in
is why
space.
the whole
It
was all a dream story trope is so like frustrating for people. It's because even over the course of like a 2-hour movie or an 8-hour game, having it at the end to be like, oh, none of it happened, none of it matters because it was all a dream. That's why it's bothersome to people. You expand that by like 20 years of lore and evenings around the table with friends in this game, and you're going to have a lot of really passionate people who are protective about the property that you're coming in and messing with. And I think if people had a little more respect for the properties that they were trying to alter for the sake of inclusion, I think there might be a little more receptiveness to change, because it's clear that some of these people just don't really know what they're messing with. And I wish we could have a little bit more appreciation for these people, like our people who just love the thing that they've been playing for 20 years, and it's somewhat reasonable that they'd be bothered if it got messed with. You know what I mean?
Well, it's also interesting because she says that it's a worthwhile development, even despite the slightly scary, very politically charged backlash. And it's like, dude, these people aren't political at all. They're just trying to play a game, and then you say, we need LGBTQ, we need POCs, we need women, and it's like, dude, you're bringing the politics in. Why you don't like now shift and say they're politically charged backlash? It's like, well, you're like, you're waving shit in their face and saying and when they say it smells like shit, you're like, no, don't be a shit hater. Like, dude.
Well, to be more charitable, I would say that it is politically charged backlash, but it's what they're lashing back against is political.
That's
in
what
nature.
I'm saying. Like, they didn't start this battle. They're just playing a TTRPG, dude. And then you come in and you say, we need to change all this. And they go, wait, no, hold on. Wait, what? No. And when they get mad, you go, oh, this politically charged backlash is really scary. What is this?
Yeah.
It's victim blaming is what it is. It's victim blaming. And I victim blame for an entire article. You victim blamer.
Yeah, well.
I do want to end it on a positive note, though, because, like, again, like I said at the top, this is just like looking at an article that we think is dumb. There's like no heavy weight or commentary behind it other than that.
No.
And at the end, she just says, make an effort to engage new players, be kind, and be receptive to their questions. That's super cool, dude. That's like
super cool.
Exactly. That's what the entire article should be about.
Could have done without the detour down sexism lane.
Yeah, like the sexism is so irrelevant to this entire article, because do you think no dude has ever gone into a store and had a Warhammer store and had a bad experience? It happens because gatekeepers exist and people have no patience sometimes for others who don't know what they're talking about. And like you already talked about, they want to discuss the more niche elements of their hobbies. And that's just the way it is. So that's totally reasonable. I think that's how the whole article should have been. It's just like talking about this small sect of more gatekeeping, less patient, more toxic fans of the game. That's really all it is. It ain't that deep.
I've stopped being a little like angry internet dweller who's like,
idiocy pronouns. Have you seen that video?
No. Oh, or is it the dude who's getting tilted about like that new
Starfield
game? Starfield, yeah.
He's like red in the face screaming, frickin' pronouns.
Yeah, no.
It's crazy, dude.
But I think it's fun to get to fake heated about something that's, I think, illustrative of like where the like discussion about video games or like quote unquote male spaces is in general, and make some semi-serious points, but honestly just kind of poke fun at like a silly little article, because at the end of the day it could have been written in a few paragraphs that said like, I had a bad experience and it scared me away, and then I had a good experience and it brought me back in. You'd be nice to people. At the end of the day, that's the whole thing. It's like, and also I think a good like little side point is, don't let one bad person ruin the whole thing for you. Don't let one bad apple ruin the whole bunch.
I see. I didn't bring that up just because you could argue that's also victim blaming. The whole someone was mean to you, just don't be upset by it. You're like, well, you're blaming me. It's like, no.
Well, I would have no hobbies or interests if every like negative person that I spoke with on that hobby was, I took that as indicative of the whole thing and just like gave up on it. Like, I'd have no hobbies or interests. And granted, I get that as like a 15-year-old, it's intimidating to have an adult tell you that like you're stupid basically about their hobby, but like at some point you like have to take responsibility for how you respond to that yourself, instead of, you know, throwing it on them, because at the end of the day, like, you're gonna encounter some unpleasant people, and you can't make it everyone else's problem, or, you know, throw sexism around. And that's ultimately the moral of the story, in my opinion, is like, don't let one bad apple ruin everything, and just be nice to people, I guess. Which isn't a particularly deep observation, but it clearly is to some of these people who write this article. Either that, or they just need to have something out.
And my final kudos, because again, I want to be somewhat nice. We've talked about, well, this article could just be, hey, I had a bad experience at a store. The author here clearly was like, well, let's make something bigger out of it. Let's like elaborate and make it more of a, I guess you'd call it a think piece maybe. And so kudos. Like, kudos for thinking outside the box, even though it's kind of ridiculous and not really well founded or anything. It's just, hey, you know what? Good job. Because this is, I'm gonna be real with you, dude. This is better journalism than a lot of the crap you see online. At least there's some effort put into it. So, yeah. But that's about it for this article.
Indeed.
Anything else? I think the summary and the moral is, in whatever community you're part of, whether it's Warhammer or Call of Duty, God forbid, just be nice to people.
Or don't. It makes it fun when you play competitive games to yell at people sometimes.
Well, the thing is, I yell at the people that I'm closest to. Like, if I'm playing a game with you, I'm probably going to yell at you and call you names. But I'm not going to yell at a random stranger unless he initiates or she initiates. Then I'll play along.
In which case, maybe. Well, I guess that's just about it for us then. Until next time, folks.
We'll see ya.